All right, cool. Everyone, thanks for being here. I feel like I'm a professor in front of a class, but this is the first time we've done this here at WeWork. My name is Marcus K. Dowling, at Marcus with a C, K, D-O-W-L-I-N-G on all social media. And I've known Geronimo Collins from the All the Fly Kids brand for 10 years. So the fact that I'm able to help Geronimo put on something here at WeWork makes me very proud. All the Fly Kids, if you're unaware, is a brand for the cool, calm, and culturally connected. It's an urban lifestyle brand. That does not mean a black lifestyle brand. It means urban lifestyle. And urban in the sense that it means actual streets, actual people doing actual things that really, truly matter. Okay, there you go. Cool. So as far as the conversation you're going to have tonight, it's an honor, privilege, and a pleasure to have Jonathan Jackson from Blavity here in town. One thing about John that I think you'll really appreciate in the conversation is that, and this is from me to you, when I come across what you do, it's the fact that you do things that are safe yet spectacular. So in my background, I'm currently the creative director at Decades Nightclub in the heart of Washington, D.C. I've also written for Pitchfork, Complex, Vice, Red Bull, a bunch of brands where cool people put words or whatever. So that's been my life for the last 10 years. I had a point where I decided to go into entrepreneurship because I was feeling unfulfilled by my professional career about 10 years ago. And if I didn't know that people like John existed and had succeeded in doing things that I wish I could do, then it would make my life almost seem impossible. And that's straight up, like, you do great work. I tell people all the time when I have like conversations with kids that I mentor, like, in their 20s or whatever, like early 20s, college kids, that, you want to be safe yet spectacular. You want to do like amazing things, but sustainably. So you never want to overshoot your mark. You never want to think too hard about it and possibly like overthink yourself into like, like a mind-bending like stress point. And the funny part is that I say things that I don't do myself. So, and that's the thing about advice. So in this conversation, because it's Geronimo having a conversation with Jonathan, you're going to hear both sides of that coin, because Geronimo, like myself, we have that same problem where we think safe yet spectacular, but sometimes we miss the mark a little bit. It happens. And I know it happens to a bunch of people in here too. That's the value of this, and I'm glad that everybody's here for this value. So I think that is the best way to introduce everyone involved. John's currently a Harvard Neiman Fellow. You've worked at LinkedIn. Anything else you're doing? Are you taking over the world anytime soon? You all good? Yeah. Cool, wonderful. Okay, so I'm not gonna hold this up anymore with my horrible stand-up routine. It's a pleasure to introduce the host of the All the Fly Kids podcast and the leader of the All the Fly Kids brand, and my good friend, one of my best friends, Geronimo Collins.
How's everybody feeling tonight? All right. So, we just gonna jump right into it. Thank you, Marcus, for that great intro. I really thought you were gonna roast me. I didn't know what to expect, but. Oh man. Okay. All right. So yeah, we're gonna talk for a while. We'll just have a conversation between peers, and then we're gonna have a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. I hope that y'all will have questions and commentary to add to this as well. If y'all want to holler, clap, whatever during the conversation, feel free. Call and response is great. So, John, thank you for coming out. Appreciate you greatly for this.
Of course.
How you feeling today?
Good, man. It's sunny.
Yes, the rain has come to an end for now.
Right.
For now.
For now.
But nonetheless, it's the beginning of spring, and we're going. It's Memorial Day weekend, so this is a pregame before the pregame. So we're gonna jump right into this. So, first question I'm gonna ask you is, what is the flyest thing you've ever done?
Like in life, damn.
You have more interviews, so just pick one.
Yeah, no. I wanted to make it relevant. So, the flyest thing was I sent my mom back to school to get her master's.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was the flyest thing I've ever done.
Now that you have just topped everybody I may have on the show to come, and everybody who's been on the show that I've asked that question.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, actually, bringing up your mom, something that I learned that you and I have in common.
Yeah.
Is that both of our parents, one is from the South and one is from Trinidad.
Yep.
So for me, my father's from Trinidad, my mother's from the South.
Yeah.
And for you, just having those similar in regards to just conservative values, things like that,
Yep.
but still very different cultural values. Growing up in that household, what was that like for you? Because
Yeah.
I have to say, I've never met. Let me not say I've never met, but I rarely meet people who have that type of experience. It's
Yeah.
either all of American or all of someplace else in the diaspora.
Yeah, so it's an interesting dichotomy, right? Like I felt like there was no world in which I could sort of like separate. My idea of blackness is very tied to like identity, but it's also tied to like familial constructs. Mm-hmm. So like because I grew up with like very, very, very boisterous like West Indian aunts, like there was no world in which like I wasn't attached to that culturally. At the same time, like my grandfather was a Navy chef and taught himself how to read on a Navy boat using L. Ron Hubbard books and Star Wars. Okay. And so like, and his parents were sharecroppers. So I'm like 3 generations from slavery, which is like directly in Mississippi. So like I don't think I was like lost between 2 worlds. I think I vacillate between them. And so my understanding of like the U.S., but then the context of knowing it's not just the U.S. has always been in like a very interesting tension point. So it was like some friends would call my house and they couldn't recognize my mom in her accent. So they'd like call and be like, is your aunt visiting? And I'd be like, it's still the woman that you just saw like 2 days ago. It's still her.
Nah, man, it's my mother.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't hear the accent because that's all I know.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like, if you can extrapolate that, like all I know is like both sides of my identity that sort of show up differently depending on where I'm at.
Yeah, I didn't really have the same type of immersion coming up. I mean, I met relatives on my dad's side, but like that deep immersion in like I made my very first trip to Trinidad in February.
Yeah.
And
you play Mass?
I did all that. I played Mas, got the costume. I'll show you the pictures afterwards.
Tribe?
Nah, paparazzi.
Okay.
Paparazzi. Tribe.
I know.
Tribe's a little touristy.
It's
a little touristy. I was running with my cousins. They was like paparazzi. Let's do that.
You like it? I love it.
Okay. So from there, knowing that you had this, you had these 2, you vacillated.
Yeah.
In terms of that, how did that inform just your decision to, your decision professionally?
Yeah. I always felt like knowing what I knew about what people's risk quotient was based on what they didn't have, I just didn't like that narrative. Like I didn't like the narrative that required my father to leave Brown his sophomore year on a National Merit Scholarship because he felt like it was costing his parents too much. So he went into the military. Like I don't like that was his decision matrix. Like I didn't think that was right.
And that's still actually, for younger people, even though it's not something that people often talk about in the whole leaving school narrative, but people think like that.
Right.
It's still a reason people leave school.
I understand it. I honor it. And so I feel like had this deep sense of, I personally struggle with like the difference between obligation and agency. So like, what is my obligation to like my immediate family unit based on what I know they gave me? But then what is my obligation to myself to live a life that I've never seen? And so like, that's where my risk portfolio comes in, which is like professionally, I need complete control over my narrative, but it can never be too far removed from the things that ground me. Yeah. So like family has to be there, but I also need the space to like create a new world for myself. And I think those are the environments I've tried to put myself in. Or if I was in an environment where it wasn't happening, I tried to like carve space for myself so I could see who I was in this like new space.
Well, I know that in one of your past interviews you were talking about, fear, commitment, and expectation. So, just speak on a little bit of just, navigating those three things.
Yeah, I think the fear has always been that like I will not be able to execute the things that are most important to me in the span of my lifetime. Will I even get the chance to start to begin a body of work that will outlast me? Because most of the people I admire, that's their preeminent focus, was like my work product. It doesn't matter if I'm here. What matters is that it is accessible to the people that need it. From a commitment standpoint, it's really around like, at what point is perseverance the wrong framework to look through? Because like that's a deeply like West Indian ethic.
Yes.
I also think it's African American, but like for my family, it's just like, if it's hard, we're harder.
Yes.
Like this is like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like this is not going to break me. So because of that, I've had to learn how to let things go, and that has felt like failure. Mm-hmm. Some of the biggest things I've released have been the greatest opportunities, but it's felt like soul crushing like L's in the minute, because I'm like, damn, I have let it all go. Like I am no longer who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
But then like 3 months later, I'm exactly who I prayed about a year ago. And so it's like, well, now I'm like, well, look at me now. And I think the what was the third part?
Fear, commitment, and expectation.
Yeah, expectation. So there's an expectation, I think, that there's not a human being alive that has higher expectations of myself than I do. That is something I learned. That's a learned behavior from watching my mom. Both my parents are the oldest. So both my parents have this sense of duty that I find honorable. Mm-hmm. But at certain points in their life, I have found it untenable, because that same level of commitment there is not the same reciprocity. And I struggle with seeing them do things and not recouping off of what they weren't able to do because they felt like they had to. And so I have that. My brother and I share that. I'm the youngest. So I have like sort of this complex where I'm like, I have to figure out how to be like Jonathan, not Sam's little brother. I figured that out. But now that I figured it out, it's super important that like I figure out ways to help my older brother, because now I have some influence, and he's better at me than a lot of things that no one knows about. So like my expectations are around like, am I who I say I am? Am I better offline than I am online? Mm-hmm. And am I consistently running the race that I'm supposed to run? So like how am I quieting the noise to be like, hey, Jonathan, are you doing the work that you know you're uniquely qualified to do? Not are you doing work that they like, not are you doing work that makes them feel like you're for them, and not are you doing work that gets you accolades that really don't mean anything.
I mean, and that takes a lot of not only self-awareness, but also just, ownership of your time, to be able to reach that point and know, okay, ask yourself those questions, So, okay. Now, in regards to just speaking about the ownership of time, I know that even myself, I do these Insta essays. And so today I was even talking about, I've made great use of my free time the past year, I was just at the Google DC office yesterday. I was on a temporary position with them on the Google Maps contract. Mm-hmm. And being in there yesterday, almost a year to the day, that was my last day there, I was like, wow, look at all that I've done in the year since I've left that job. And just, I thought about what I would not have been able to do had I stayed. But knowing that I've made a great use of the free time that I've had since I've left, I'm still struggling to just, get those like, just time management, get time management down as a creative, as an entrepreneur and things like that. So, for you, like I said, just having that self-awareness, ownership of time, I think that's a key component.
Yeah. I when I was at LinkedIn, the CEO, somebody asked him a question like how he manages his time like globally. He runs he's a CEO, but he also runs the product org. That's like pretty rare to like run an org and also like be a CEO. And they asked him like, what's the most effective thing you do with your time? And he said, every week I make time to think. I have unstructured blocks on my calendar. My team knows about it, and I go and I do things and I think. Not a meeting, not like a working session. Like, I think about what I'm doing, how it's going, what it looks like, and I take time to myself. And at the time, I just sort of started working, so I didn't get it. But now, arguably the most important thing I do to reclaim my time is make time to think about how I'm even using it. Because you can do all the like plotting you want, you can do all the like, you can have the illest Asana and Trello board, and your shit is just connected to your Google Calendar, but like something will disrupt that.
Yeah.
And if you are not conscious about what things are non-negotiable in your day, then something or someone will take that from you. Yeah. And so I've become vigilant. You could even say like tyrannical about not allowing people inside of that space, because it's what makes me who I need to be. Like, I need that time to literally show up for the people and things I care about at a supreme level, so I can do the things I know I'm capable of. Because I know myself without it. I'm just starting to learn myself with an extra dose of energy that I have planned and thought about.
So how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I had a birthday last week. I turned 28 last week.
28?
Yeah.
Okay. So 25 to life. Oh, yeah, I should have said that. Everybody check your phones. Please, please, please. Make sure they on, silent, all of that. 25 to life. So he hasn't been to jail. No. But 25 to life, when you turn 25, you pretty much documented just what the quarter life crisis meant for you.
Yeah.
So we all know, I'm assuming we all know what a quarter life crisis is, what that means. You've now entered into Saturn's return. You know about that?
I do.
Okay. So just the change, the shift in yourself mentally, emotionally, what have you, from when you were 25 to now at 28, what has that been like for you in doing everything that you've done over the past 3 years?
This is going to feel like LMA. So I feel like I am conscious of the things that I thought I knew about myself, which wasn't that much. Okay. I'm also aware of how much unlearning I still have to do. That's been the most like humbling thing, because it's like you can reach, or you can hit a pinnacle. Like I've hit things. I've had to reset my goal charts a couple different times, because when I let myself be who I knew I was, I started knocking things off my plate that like I didn't think I could do.
Who were you when you realized, when you knew who you were? Like,
I was a scared 24-year-old who had moved across country and felt guilty that he had abandoned his family, because I was 3,000 miles from home and couldn't afford to go home. I had to choose between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
And this is when you were with LinkedIn?
That's why I was on LinkedIn. So when I moved back to New York, because there's some things that were happening that I believed I needed to be present for. Not because I could change, but because my sense of obligation outweighed my sense of duty to an employer with which I only have an economic relationship. They don't care about me. I care about what I care about. So I'm also not one of those people who, I think there's this trend now to be like, I like don't care about anything. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm very clear with what I care about, because that helps keep me aligned with what I should be doing. I think when I realized that like I didn't have to operate with obligation isn't the only source of strength that I had. If I could let those things go and just decide that there were things that I believed in, things that were important, and then things that were probably necessary but didn't need all my attention, I could then allocate my time in a way that was serving me the best. And when I learned to like actually take care of myself, which broadly I didn't. The thing I love about my parents is the thing that I had to unlearn about them. It's that they took care of everybody else in the village. They never showed me how to take care of myself. I had to do that work myself. I had to literally go out and figure out, what does it look like for me to be healthy? Like, what does it mean for Jonathan to be peak Jonathan? I had no examples.
From a mental health standpoint?
Any standpoint.
Okay.
And I don't fault them for it, because they probably didn't have anyone tell them that. Because it's like, we're black, right? Like, this is an idea of survival as success. Like, that is a harrowing framework. But the minute you start to break out of that, you realize that there's so much more. But to get there, you have to let some things go that used to define you. Like the things that used to anchor me are not the things that are going to help me have the best year of my life, which I plan on doing. And I think that is what I got a preview to when I broke out of my own self-contained shell. Because none of my friends have ever been surprised by what I did. I'm like the only person in my immediate circle that is consistently surprised by my level of execution, which means I have a negative self-image that I hold dear. They don't. Mm-hmm. So I am deeply thankful that I have people in my life who have affirmed me when I wanted to cancel myself. And they refused to let me do that because they knew who I needed to be.
So you don't consider yourself the best person in the group, like the smartest person in the group?
Never.
Okay.
I'm naturally contrarian. So as a person, I don't believe hype. Like the thing that I think has made me good at my job or good at what I do at Blavity, I don't believe what people say about me. So, and now that can be super negative because I can take on negative characteristics. But when it's positively applied, it helps me just focus on my work. It helps me not walk into rooms and think like I'm just like a blessing to people because I exist. Because I've met people I used to admire and then realized that that's who they thought they were. And I was like, I need to be, if you're the old head that people want to be, if I get to your age, my job is to be nothing like you. Like I can't ever like be like
clap it up, it's cool, clap, snap, all of that.
I don't ever want to be like those people. Yeah. And I just had to get close enough to be like, you're trash. And like that's okay, because that's a choice.
I mean, I know that feeling. I know what it's like to meet somebody who you thought was here, and in the grand scheme of things, they might be there, but when you actually meet them, you're just like, you right here with me, and you're really not even all that cool. Okay. So, what is your social life like, man? Because you're a busy guy. You go out for drinks. Or have you scaled back on social? Are you just highly selective? Like, what is that like for you?
Yeah, so one of my major goals for 28 is to make sure that I apply the same level of rigor to my personal life that I have to my professional life. So I feel like I have created environments for myself where I have told myself that I can never have the thing I want because I'm not there yet. And that has been really detrimental because I end up saying I'm living, but not actually living. I'm just existing at a high level, which is not living at a minimum level. And I no longer want to be equating myself with that. So socially, I think I am pretty introverted, like as a person. That's hard for people to believe, but I just play an extrovert, but I take a lot of joy in being by myself.
Extroversion as a learned behavior.
Yeah, because I knew that my role at Blavity required me to be in a lot of stages, on a lot of stages, doing a lot of things performatively. That's not where I sort of really enjoy myself. I enjoy myself in small groups of people I like, where we can openly roast each other. Like that's really how I feel. Like that's a love language. You gotta
be able to joan on your friends and nobody catches feelings.
I just feel like if you haven't clowned them, are they really your people? Like that's how I kind of operate.
That's real.
So that's been big for me. I think exploring like what does my life look like if I'm very specific about who I involve in it. Given that I think at this point I know that I'm beginning to understand the scope of work that I think will become my vocation. Like I didn't really know that before. I think I was just kind of doing stuff and like testing. I sort of gotten a glimpse to perhaps some of the work that I think I'm here to do, which is really beautiful. It's really humbling. But what it also tells me is like there's certain parts of that I do not believe I'm supposed to do alone. And so then knowing that, then that means that there are different levels of people in my life for different reasons. I was not a person I don't have that many friends. And I mean that really specifically.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. But I think for me, it was hard because a lot of people really I am not a hard person to get close to. It's very hard for me to get close to you because my friends are not people I call when it's good. My friends are people I call when I'm in the ER. And I'm like, I just need somebody to talk to.
Were you recently in the ER?
There's some people that I know that were.
Okay.
And so specifically, like, that's how I know those people are there for me, because it's not about my job. It's not about if I'm verified. It's about if they're verified in my life. Like I only have people that are official that I call. Like I do not deal, generally
With
speaking,
fair weather friends.
well, if I haven't seen you under pressure, I don't know who you are. I don't. And the people I can call and I know I'm friends with, I've seen them undergo pressure, and I've seen them emerge as better, and I've seen them not let their breakdowns prohibit them. And so that means that if I ended everything I was doing today, moved somewhere, their question wouldn't be like, what are you doing professionally? It would be some form of, what do you need from me, and how can I be there for you? And those are the only people I have any interest in being around when I'm not working, because we only do this life thing once, and it's really fragile. So if I had the agency to choose who I spend time with, it is selfish not to.
So just thinking about how also just something else that you brought up in another interview that you did, just, you make a list. You're very people oriented.
Yeah.
And just how people play specific roles, and you're very intentional about that. And I can't speak for other people, but just talking with you, I see that.
Yeah.
So just thinking about how, okay, so you make a list of questions people ask you.
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna break this down for people. So, questions people ask you. Questions people ask me. So, name, questions, contact info, and understanding the market that you're in.
Yeah.
And that is how you're best able to keep in contact with new people, as well as just, understand why people are asking you these questions.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
as a creative person.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way, because when I heard you say that, I was like, you know what? I do actually asked a lot of the same questions. People often come to me asking, where to go, what's a good restaurant to go to, or do you know about this, about that, because I've set myself as that person who knows what's popping.
Yeah.
But not what's popping because it's necessarily popular, but because it's actually really good, and your experience is going to be something that you can take away, and it's going to elevate your taste level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In terms of that, do you think, just in a general statement, do you think most people are that intentional with the people that they encounter, the people that are in their lives, things like that?
I don't know if I can comment on that specifically. My general sense would be no, but the reason isn't because I don't think they want to be. It's because we don't have conversations about why it matters. So I'm not of the belief that you could ascribe a general solution to people and then expect them to know it. I think if you have
I'm glad you said that too.
Yeah, I just want to contact. If you have a platform, you're influential. Full stop. If you have a platform and people come to you for something, you have a level of influence. We can discuss how big your influence is, the vehicle through which you communicate your influence, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. But if people come to you for things, you have influence. If you do that well on a platform, you have a responsibility. If you as a person are that platform, you have a responsibility. What you do with that reality of that responsibility is totally your prerogative. For me, I realized very early on that the more I chose not to lie or not to create very specific narrative fallacy, which is this idea of this is my story. I'm going to extrapolate the things that made me successful and then sell it back to you as if it's the only way you could do it, which is what a lot of people are caking up on, and it's not true. Because they got there in 2014, they're not who they say they are in 2018, which is why they can only sell you something. They can't build it in front of you. It's not the same thing. I decided never to be that person. So the reason I have that sheet is because a lot of people will enter my inbox and ascribe to me titles I do not deserve. I do not deserve to be called an activist. I am not an organizer. That is not the work that I do. I don't say that pejoratively, but it is because I know the people who do that.
Just being honest.
Well, also, it's a better use of that person's time to go talk to an organizer. And I know them, and I have a platform. Why wouldn't I? I'm a sucker if I don't give them access. That literally makes me a grade A hater. And I refuse to be that kind of person. That's not how I'm built. I cannot go to sleep if I knew I took an opportunity from someone, and all I had to do was forward an email.
Just that simple.
right? Just Command E, like that's really it.
And
Like, that's the shortcut?
it's really unfortunate the number of people who will take those accolades, those that are undeserving, because they just want to have all the glory. And you know, I mean, at a very baseline level.
We got to get those people out the paint. Like this year, the other thing I'm doing is like
I'm all for getting people out the way.
I'm very thoughtful about like where I like speak and choose, but I think we got to have a conversation like as a family about people who we know aren't who they say they are and are dealing in information exchange that is hurting us. Because I talk to a lot of people that have gotten really poor advice from people who put things in their profile because they want to never be forgotten. So they ascribe a title that they're not built to deal with. Because the thing isn't whether you have the title. The thing is, like, can you defend it?
Yes.
That's what sports is.
Absolutely.
No one cares if you were the 2018 champion. They care about who's winning the playoffs. And so if you're not in the game and you're not even in the bench and you're not even in the arena and you called yourself a champion, at some point you're going to have to meet somebody on a court somewhere that's going to be like, let's face up. And at that moment you get exposed. And most people are afraid of getting exposed. They're not afraid of like what happens after, because they haven't had any real competition. They never had anybody who can actually take their lunch money from them in front of them, because it's been easy sailing. I'm the kind of person where like there's nothing someone can say to me that I haven't said to myself. There's no conversation a person cannot unseat me. I have been the meanest, most detrimental person to myself, and learning how to love myself. The freedom is, yes, like now I'm happier, but it's also that like you got nothing for me. There's nothing, you can't talk to me any type of way anymore because I've already done it to myself. So now that gives me a level of freedom to just ask people very direct questions, not to hurt them, but to make sure we're having a conversation that is net beneficial for the people and the communities that we say we serve.
So everything you just said, how did that help you? I don't know at which point along your career path you came to this realization. Yeah. But how has just this knowledge that you have and this again awareness, how did that help you, inform you when you were working on the LinkedIn influencer program, and even, you know, corporate branding with Blavity? Yeah. That's because you're dealing with people. You're dealing with, you know, deciding, okay, are they really as influential as they say they are? Or, you know, or even on the corporate branding side, you know, just making sure that you are positioning the brand in a way that matches with what Blavity represents. Yeah,
at LinkedIn, I got that job really, really young. So my boss at the time, this guy named Dan Roth, was one of the best feature writers in technology. He was one of the first people to write an actual feature on Donald Trump in 2004. It was fantastic. You should go read it, because he essentially exposed a lot of what people are dealing with right now in 2004. But one of the things that he told me when I had the job, he said, I'm really hands off, so this is your thing. He gave me more autonomy than I knew what to do with. One of the things I had to learn how to do was say no to really powerful people who would try to skirt me. So a lot of people wanted to be influencers, and we had a really high level bar where you needed to be a CEO or someone that sort of commanded that. And so a lot of people who were a senior in their jobs were not qualified. And those people, if you think about it at that level, they're not hearing no in their life. They have surrounded themselves by people who only say yes because those people are beholden to them in some kind of form.
Right.
And so me not being there, me being a young black kid showing up in their office, I had one meeting with a senior exec who, you know, wined me and dined me. He took me around, he showed me some stuff. And at the end of the meeting, he expected a yes. And I, as graciously as I could, said, we already have your CEO as an influencer. We never take two from the same company. I'm happy to show you how to grow your influence, and I think you're actually fantastic, so I'll give you all the time you want. He ended up emailing my boss and then saying, lying about me and saying that I was like disrespectful, and he didn't understand how, as a client, that they would allow somebody like me to talk to him that way. And
someone like you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just regular. Like, you know how it go. Like, they're not here for me, so I'm built for that. But again, my boss, who's a stand-up guy, was like, Jonathan, I know you. Before I tell this dude to literally never enter my inbox again, I just want to know, how did this conversation go? And I said, he was upset. He doesn't hear no a lot. And he was like, say less. And he got him out the paint. So that was how that went. But that gave me a level of confidence. And what ended up happening was I became the person people in the org would go to when they needed to say no. Because in an org like that, there's a church and state line. I'm on the editorial side, and there's a whole sales side. Sometimes the influencers were at the helm of large-scale clients. And so to sell things, sometimes a salesperson would be like, okay, all I got to do is get them an influencer, I'll close the deal. No sway. That's never going to happen because you don't control that door. I do. So what happened was because they knew I was going to say no, they would pitch the client to me. And so they'd be like, Jonathan's on the editorial team. It's not my play call. Mm-hmm. You know that. So I became a friend of them by having a backbone. It took me a while. It took me some L's, but the same framework there applied to Blavity, in which I've been in a lot of rooms, I spent a lot of time in ad agencies, brands, and the level of disdain that they have for us is it's unimaginable. Does
it go beyond just the fact that y'all are black?
No, that's where it starts and ends.
Okay.
That's like where it is.
Okay.
Like, no, it's right there. Like
just checking.
It's like there's some you're too young to be here, but it's pretty much the melanin. Like, just to be fair. Like, but what would happen was the thing that I think was most offensive to their sensibility. Sometimes I used to think it was like that I was there. Then I realized it was the fact that we were doing something that they hadn't done. It was the fact that like we had the IP and like no one could take it from us, and that like people were engaging with us at a high level, and that like they were late. Now on the brand side, I found a little bit more flexibility because the brands were like, why didn't our agency tell us about you? And I was like, I don't know, Steve, but now I'm here. Like, now I'm here, right? Like, you don't need them.
When exactly did Blavity hit that critical mass? Because I remember when I got hip to y'all, it was via Twitter.
Yep.
I say maybe at the top of 2016. Yeah. And I was just like, yo, I don't know who's behind this, but this is probably like, like in terms of just, black media, especially on the digital side, y'all were like heading that where, you had companies like, you had outlets like Vibe and The Source and XXL. They're all switching to digital because they have to, but y'all started from the onset. Yeah. But I think because y'all were also millennials, you already knew where to talk and where to approach from the onset. I think that so we kind of cracked. We had a big milestone in February 2015. We hit a million monthly active uniques, which is pretty. It sort of vaulted us into people's radars. I think I saw it a little earlier because if in the earlier days of Blavity, like we were doing a lot of one-to-one stuff. So we were building on Instagram, and we would hit artists up, like DM them and be like, "Can we repost your art?" And for the repost, like we'll give you credit. Can we just use the Blavity tag? And they were like, sure. 4 years later, those are the people that are like selling out galleries. And so it's been interesting because I got a chance to see people before they are what the world knows them now to be. And that's really key to catch people right when they're about to hit it. Yeah, and we didn't know. We just knew that people weren't necessarily like giving out shots, and we weren't necessarily like the big shot, but we knew that like the vehicle, in my opinion, is less important than what's inside it, because the vehicle will change, right? And so we knew Instagram was visual. We knew Instagram was a place that, especially in 2014, before they started swapping the algorithm, it was sort of like very much a plug and play. It was like this looks good, people like it, it begins to trend. And we knew that black art, black designers have a stranglehold on things on Instagram. Like it is a beautiful thing to now go and search the hashtag. But before, we didn't even have that. Stuff was still getting shown in my feed. Friends were still reposting the flyest Etsy shops. And some of those things that sort of we now are ubiquitous to like the platform weren't then. And so we knew that we were naturally creative and that those people were around us. So it was like, how do you build something communal? How do you make it so you're not taking anything? And then how do you show value on the external side? And I think we applied that framework to a couple different platforms. But as we grew, people started to know us from that. And then it didn't matter sort of like what you become. If your audience is your audience and you have a relationship with them, your evolution becomes their evolution. So they're excited to see you grow because they know who you were, because they got to see you
before you did the growth. I think a lot of people now try to retroactively like pop. It's like those videos you get served where like a guy shows up and he like pulls up in the Wraith and he's like, it wasn't always like this, right? And he like it's like cut scene, and he's like, you know, I grew up in this trailer and it was hard, but I don't want to talk about that. Here are my 5 tips to like earth-shattering marketing success. And then like click through link, and you go to like YouTube and you're like, you know, I have this training, and you know, for the low cost of $179.99 in 3 installments, you too can enjoy this raucous success.
This audio book or this ebook.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like that's like obviously an exaggerated example that happens, but that's the retroactive part of like knowing that the audience you want doesn't care about you right now.
Yeah.
So you gotta go figure out how to like get in their face, and you're so desperate that you'll like literally play yourself. It looks like my feed is filled with Dave Chappelle skits.
Wow.
Like, for real.
Okay, so let's talk about outreach.
Cool.
Dues, what people should do more of, and hell no, this ain't flying. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Outreach in what capacity? Like,
just like, you know, reaching out to somebody that say someone is just starting out, or they've been working for a while, whatever their thing is, and they reach out to you, so to speak. You know, just in what you've seen in your inbox over the years. You know, what are, just think of some examples of like dues, what people could do more of, and what people were dead wrong. You know, it's just like, nah, man, that's not how you know, hit somebody up. Or a cold call.
Yeah, so I think the first thing, right, is I have a lot of empathy for outreach, because there were people that didn't have to rock with me in 2014 that did, that I'm still friends with. And so I'm gracious to them for being kind enough to give me feedback on my poor outreach, because I wasn't always this person. That being said, I think there were a few things that helped increase my level of outreach. One, brevity is a gift. If you know a person is busy, edit your email before you send it. Like, I get that you want to write it all down, but like a medium post in my inbox is less likely to get responded to than a 5-sentence email, which you can do. You can condense your ask into 5 sentences and make it so clear that I'm forced to read it. Because if I have to skim, I'll probably lose interest, because my inbox is pretty heavy. Second thing is like, what do you want from me? Like, get to the what as quickly as possible, because that helps me learn if I can even solve this problem. Or, which sometimes is even a better look, is I'm not the person for you, but I might know the person. So the better you write that email, the easier it is for me to forward.
And a lot of people don't think about that. Like, you know, like you said, you might not be the right person, but you know, there's 100 other people I know that could possibly be that person.
And I want to ask them, but the problem is I respect that person too much to waste their time. But I respect if you didn't waste mine. So if you haven't wasted my time, you get the added social capital that I now trust you enough in my inbox, plus the exponential social capital of me hitting my homie who knows me and knows I won't waste their time. So if I'm not the person, your open rate increases 2 or 3x the minute I email them, because they're like, sure, Jonathan, whatever they need, boom. And I do this all the time, because sometimes I'm not the person, but I am almost always the conduit. So it doesn't I don't have to be the guy. Like, I don't need to be known as the plug. Sometimes it's actually more effective to be the outlet. And like, that's okay too. And you can sort of do that. But I think if the outreach is a thing, brevity works, specificity is helpful. And then actually knowing what I do. This is what I see a lot of. I think people sometimes see me on the internet, make wild assumptions, and then send emails. And that's just
wild assumptions such
about
as
just like stuff I don't do. Like, just jobs I don't have, people I don't know, things that aren't real, places we've never met, like just like stuff that should, like, just really like, there's like a reach, and then there's like,
saw you at the day party last Sunday.
Yeah, like, no, you didn't. No, you like it's there was a meme, I think it was like an Arthur meme where like the dude's like in VIP, and he's like, this is our summer, fam, right? And the guy's like not looking at him, and the guy's just like talking to him right here, and it's like, you know people that know me, you don't know me. So it's a better use of your time to hit them, to possibly ask them if they could see if I'm open. It's not a good use of your time to hit me, assuming things that you don't know, because I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I will protect my time. And if those things intersect, I'm going to protect my time, because I'd rather you have this experience with me, because what happens is if you take this and place it in the place you really want to go, that I want to help people get to, that person you want to email, not only will they not respond, they will put you on a list that means anyone involved in their thing isn't going to deal with you. And that is based solely off the first point of contact, because everybody makes assumptions. It's not about whether it's fair or not. It's about whether you have the information to avoid that false assumption and get their assumption to be positive about you. Not fair, but true. And it happens in any industry. I just know what happens in media. You can probably extrapolate that to anything. But if you know that information, you can probably increase your likelihood of success in whatever capacity that is.
Duly noted. I hope y'all noted that as well. So the United Nations, they invited you to come speak.
Yeah.
And I learned that 2015 through 2024 is the, let me read this, International Decade for People of African Descent.
Yeah.
So that's what we are currently in. And I want to tie this into just Afrofuturism.
Yep.
You know, you think about, you know, the success of Black Panther. You think about a woman, an artist such as Janelle Monáe, you know, and just many other displays and images of the like. You know, give us your thoughts on this whole Afrofuturism wave. I always got to say that slow. I mess that word up all the time.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think the interesting thing about Black Panther is that, like, Afrofuturism isn't new. The attention it's getting is. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you really go back, and like my dad was reading Black Panther, it's like that was like one of the earliest Marvel comics that sort of like we were there, like you saw yourself. The practice of believing in a future where you are centered is critical. Like it is one of the most important things we can do to take care of ourselves. Like I think you do that. We do that on a personal level. So obviously Afrofuturism, I think, is like there's a science fiction element. There's like an element that's like very personal, and people are creating worlds around it, which is key. But I think we all naturally do it. We all naturally look into our future and imagine ourselves centered in it, and then all the things we want and the ecosystem that we love. And I think a lot of us are getting to work on making sure that that's not just a future, but the building begins in the present. And things like Wakanda, things like theaters being purchased out, things like people understanding that the Dora were a real thing. That's a real thing, right? Like a matriarchal, because those are actually things you can go back and find. That the dress was inspired, it wasn't imagined.
Right.
The reality of where the costume designer got those concepts from, and like all lines leading back to a place, reinforces a knowledge of ourselves that we know is true, but at every single level in our lives is told that it is invalid. We are told that it doesn't matter. We are told that it is no longer relevant, and we are told that history. Ta-Nehisi said, I think, a couple years ago, that history does not exist to comfort us.
And it shouldn't.
Nor should it, right?
History can be a very ugly thing. There's a lot of ugly history out there.
Ours, collectively, the more we understand it and the more we find the spaces we need to articulate it and reimagine it and remix it for our purposes, allows us to do the difficult work that is required of us in the present, regardless of what that work looks like. And I think that is what Afrofuturism gives, is that moment to be like, what if? And we're all invited.
Just another added element to just, you know, having knowledge of self. And I think a lot of people stray away from that because of just how brutal and ugly history can be.
Well, I think also, there's that, but I think also, like, I don't know if we really collectively sometimes engage with history in different ways. I think sometimes we assume that's like a scholarly thing, and I'm like, no, I don't think that's the way. In my belief, there's a difference between schooling and education. I think schooling is something that you are essentially like factored into. I think education is something you can glean and then you use to get closer to what it is that matters to you. That's different. That's different than like how we talk about the education system. What I'm talking about is very personal. Like, I don't believe I'm going to Harvard for my education, for my schooling. I'm going for my education. I'm going so I come out 9 months later with a set of skills that allows me to build tables and buildings for people I care about. Full stop. Like I'm not interested in getting a seat. I want the entirety of the table, and then I want the building, and then I want a block. And so to do that, I need to understand frameworks that I don't now have access to, that I'm going to be in an environment that gives me closer proximity to the people, the things, and the outlying resources I need to collect to build a Wakanda of my own making, and to plug the people in that I care about and give them the things that they have been deprived.
Well, I'm gonna have to put her on blast. I know she's gonna kill me. I'm looking right at her. This woman right here, Sophia Nelson, she's actually working on something like what you just described right now, approaching history not from a scholarly level, even though she has the scholarly training in history as an ethnographer, you know, and just really trying to make it so that the desire to want to seek the historical knowledge is compelling and interesting to black people and young black people at that.
I think so. It's crazy, right? It's like, so Malcolm X's birthday was last week, and so one of the things that I think we struggle with is, like, when he said by any means, I don't think he was just talking about physical protection. In my mind, that's any vehicle we use to deliver information to people. And so, like, that requires us to think about, are we being effective with the vehicles we're using to reach people? So, like, could you blame people if the vehicle is not optimized for how they are experiencing life?
Right.
Do you get to say that, like, this person is unsalvageable, instead of looking at the vehicle you're pulling up in and being like, they don't even know that they don't know that you care about them. Like, as people, we don't accept things without having a level of emotional safety. Like, you don't let somebody in your house and let them run all in their shoes. Like, take your shoes off.
Right.
So if the vehicle, I think we have to have a balanced conversation about, like, the vehicles through which we communicate with people before we shame them for not getting, not becoming the woke that we want them to be. Right. And so if we're communicating, I think that's on the beholder. Like, someone, I've decided that that's something I have to check myself on, is like, am I the most effective communicator in the space that I'm in with the time that I have for the people I care about?
Try to keep yourself from, virtue signaling and making those value judgments based upon what you know and your experience and how you learn things.
That's deeply inappropriate, and I think that's what it's a thing I've had to really work on not getting caught up in, and that's why my friend circle is so important, right? Because if I don't keep people around me that can push me and can engage me in critical discourse and be like, hey man, the thing about feedback is, like, that's a love language to me. People that care about me give me feedback. People that don't continue to pad my ego so they can get what they want. My friends tell me when I'm not being the person that they know I am. That's why we're friends.
Yes.
If they didn't, they would just be associates.
And what you're saying is a common thing in terms of knowledge. Just like, your friends tell you the truth, and people who want something from you, they just, pad your ego. But I think so many of us, in an effort to be seen for what we're doing, and being very sensitive and passionate about what we're doing, we take our friends. Some of us may take our friends' opinions and thoughts for granted, even though they're in the best interest. Yeah.
Well, it's also right. I think the other thing is, like, I have a lot of friends that aren't in the same spaces I'm in, which is a gift, right? Because there is a groundedness. I spend a lot of time in front of people on stages. I'll probably be doing that for a large portion of my life. That is attached to my gift sets and possibly my vocation. I don't need people to necessarily affirm that I'm good at that. What I do need is them to say, hey, you could have tweaked this. You could have been a little sharper here. This is what I saw. Here's how you can get better. In return, they're in different, I have friends that are organizers. They work in education. They're personalities. They're scholars. They're doctors. They're starting businesses. My gift to them is my knowledge set. So when they email me and say, can you look at this document, or can you help me with this strategic marketing plan, or do you know a VP at this thing, it's always a go. And if there's a typo, I'm going to tell them, because I want them to get exactly what they want out of that room the same way they want me to get out whatever stage I'm on. And because we don't have an obsession, sometimes I see an obsession with people who are like, my work's got to intersect with this person's for it to be valuable. No, it does not. The only thing your work probably has to intersect with is the actual purpose you have in doing it. The other side of it is kind of like, that's a nice add-on.
Yeah.
But like, that's not why I'm friends with who I'm friends with. I'm friends with them because they were who they say they are, and they are consistently interested in evolving at a growth rate that means that they're never going to remain the same person. And the cocooning they go through and all the messiness and all the unlearning, they have welcomed me into that messy process. And my job isn't to judge based on what I see them to be. It is to tell them I love them and that they are worthy of whatever pivots they want to do. Because I don't know about you guys, but like 2018 has been wild. Like this is just a different
And we only
year.
in May.
Like May has been out of control. Like I have lived 2 years this month. But the thing that has helped me like kind of calm down is that like all is as it should be.
Yeah.
And like that being a truth allows me to be like, this is crazy.
Seeing things as they are versus how they could be.
Right. But like, this is crazy. But like, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Like the alternative is like a lot of things in my life. There are a lot of ways I don't get here. The way I got here, no matter what the path was, is still beautiful because it's mine. And I don't need to justify that. And my friends don't make me. And the people that love me don't need the justification. They just want to see that I'm just becoming more of myself.
Well, let's move a little bit into your area, digital media. So cancel culture. I know when we were planning this out, I said, what's some stuff you really want to make sure that we touch on when we talk about this. So cancel culture versus hashtag outrage Twitter, and I just what is, besides the end goal of getting somebody canceled, like what happens next?
Yeah, so I have a there's a caveat here. I think there are situations that have long been going on that are being brought to light that require a level of fortitude and a level of removing that person from their position of influence so they can, one, atone in whatever the courts decide for the wrong they have done for a long period of time that has unseated people and communities, and so that we do not keep deifying people who are so human that when their flaws come up, we are somehow shocked that you could be a nice person and still have illicit behavior. We should not be shocked by this. We can be hurt. You deserve your emotions, but shock, we gotta let that go. That is not healthy, and the idea that like this person is this, so it can't be that, doesn't work. We don't apply it to any other part of our life. We cannot apply it to people that we love, but refuse to hold accountable, because that is the point of influence. I am accountable to my team, to our that is the role I chose. I don't get to run from the consequences of not doing my job. I accept that and all that comes with that. Cancel culture is a little different, so I wanted to give that caveat before people chop this up and drag me on Twitter. So cancel culture, as I've seen it, has been this thing where people have a conversation in which two people disagree. We can pick a random topic. Let's talk about like the solve for black wealth accrual, right? Some people say it's only real estate. That's the way. Mm-hmm. Some people say, hey, actually, it's entrepreneurship. Cool. Okay, great. It's all about more Wakanda. I'm into it. Cancel culture is this thing that happens when somebody with a level of influence or clout decides that they might not like a perspective. They disagree with the perspective in their prerogative. The way they disagree might, be slightly vitriolic, but it's their opinion. It's an open platform. What happens next is the death of discourse. Like the conversation ends right there, and the retweets begin, in which people start to unseat the person who had the opposing opinion.
Yes.
And the problem that I've identified is less that like it's Twitter or like this is where it happens. It's that it becomes so reductive, we lose out on what could have been a really rich conversation from two really smart, talented people who have opposing opinions, which as black people, we have. we're smart enough to hold two opposing ideas and deal with them and let them conflict and let them bump into each other and let them intersect and be difficult. Because those are the types of conversations where two people leave, they might never agree, but the respect level increases. And on top of that, the people in both of those camps learn that there is a world in which there might be some issue salience that allow them to work on something for the betterment of not just one group of people, but now two that otherwise wouldn't have intersected. And my problem is that we don't even get there because people try to get canceled too early. And I'm like, well, if we cancel, who comes next? Because again, we talked about this, like the other part is like a lot of people out here don't even have succession plans.
Right.
So we're out here canceling people, and before they got canceled, there wasn't even a grooming of a person. Because the issue I've seen is that people sometimes stay too long in seats because they're afraid that if they grow out of that seat, they won't be who they were. Spoiler alert, of course you won't. That's the point of growth. Like, you weren't supposed to be the person you were. You can take all of those things, but the idea is all of those things were exactly who you needed to be to become the person in the future.
So we're able to cancel all these other, black celebrities or whoever the case may be. How come we haven't been successful at canceling somebody like R. Kelly? How does he skate by continuously? Is it because the justice system won't, do what they're supposed to do? Or is it just because you still gonna have, Uncle John and they still gonna play R. Kelly at the cookout and go to the show when he come into town?
Yeah. I see what you're doing here. I see what you're doing. It was too light. I don't know if this is the root cause of the persistence, but I believe what I have seen from people I have asked about how he has maintained a level of influence and success, knowing that these things are publicly documented and knowing that the stories that we've had from early 2016 until now, these in-depth reports, part of it has been choices. People making choices to say, yeah, but, or yes, but like, are we sure? Or gaslighting publicly. So like, yeah, but like, what about their credibility? The clearest example of that, and I do not compare these to make it a reductive, but I want to really stress that, like, we know what this feels like when there is an injustice, and the way we are displayed, the way the headlines are written, always discuss a point at which a black person does something that we societally deem gives them the right to then be dehumanized. So the way it is positioned is such that, yeah, but we got to look at their past because... No. So, right? Extreme. R. Kelly also doing extreme things to the detriment of women ad nauseum for decades, right? Not new. The way in which we talk about this, like, is devoid of, I think, the difficulty that we know comes with acknowledging that this person is supremely talented and supremely dangerous. Mm-hmm. Which is more important to focus on? Is it the hits? Like, really, when you put it that way, is it the hits? Is it Ignition? Is that what we need to justify this Memorial Weekend? Like, Ignition?
And but even saying that, again, now you're looking at, okay, so he's the benchmark of people that should be canceled.
I don't think he's the benchmark. I just think he actually has to deal. I think he has to be prosecuted for these things we know.
No. He absolutely does. But just thinking about, okay, so people have come behind him who have been, accused and faulted for all these wrongdoings,
right?
Whatever they may be, sexual assault, rape, domestic violence, whatever the case may be, right? But you run into that same thing of the artist versus the art. You know what I mean? And I think through that emotional connection through the art, it's just making it entirely too difficult for people to just cut people off and just really just get them out the way?
So I think there's a personal conversation that people have to go through. Like, okay, am I comfortable listening? Like, so that's like the conversation of like, you know, I'm on Spotify, R. Kelly pops up. Do I stop the song? Do I play this song? I think that's a little reductive because the broader conversation we're having is like, people are actually saying things like, well, why are these women coming forward now? We have larger conversations to have about why you even think, what do you mean why? The same reason rapes go underreported, right? Because they are actually, statistically, not believed.
Right.
And they are at risk of all of the economic and physical violence that can be bestowed upon them when they are not in a position of power in an industry that is taking from them. So, like, the conversation to me, like, we can have that one, but, like, there are broader ones that are actually, we have to interrogate and deal with that are deeply uncomfortable. So what? Like,
let's deal with it.
There's no other. What's the option? We ignore it, and people keep getting hurt. Is that like no, the question is that a? This is the question I ask myself: is that a world I would like my 2-year-old niece in? Is it a world? Is that the world in which Godfather Jonathan says you can do anything, knowing damn well I had a chance to say, I don't agree with this. This is wrong. Here are the reasons why. This is the conversation I'm willing to have because I know people think I have an opinion about it. I've never said it. Here's what it is. Come what may, so be it. We don't work this hard to not have agency. So if you have agency, it literally, I have a choice. Me, Jonathan, not anybody else. I don't care about them. I care about how I wake up and how I go to sleep. I know that people look at what I do and sometimes will mimic and or think about things differently because of how I have positioned myself. Mm-hmm. And so that is the choice that I make specific to conversations like this. That also means that just because I have an opinion on this doesn't make me an expert. Also doesn't mean it's always my time to speak about it. And this is the other thing I think that happens in conversations like this is just because you have a large platform, sometimes you have to actually step off it and give it away. And that is what I have chosen to do in very specific situations because someone else's story is more salient than mine and will force people to encounter their truth in a way that makes it inescapable.
Okay.
And sometimes that's not, I may agree with them, but I'm not the right person to pen that. And I think that I have started to realize the space that I occupy among my peer set is a little different than what I thought it was, but that's okay because I'm still able to do the right kind of work, hopefully in the right way, and then set people up for what they need. Okay.
So one more question before, because I want to actually have you speak a little bit about your fellowship at Harvard. Yeah. The term Blavity Blacks.
Yeah.
When you first heard that, because it's the term itself is basically a jab at, suburban black folks to a degree, as well as just, how authentic you are in your blackness. So when you first heard the term, what was your initial thought?
Yeah, a homie, I think I was in the gym, and a homie texted me people text me very long strings. I'm always like, could we summarize? Like, what are we doing? And so they were like, yo man, like what's going on Twitter? And so I delete Twitter, Instagram from my phone when I'm working. It's like, I just don't know, like I'm not there. So I had to go see it and interrogate it. I thought it was super, super funny. Just contextually, I thought people were really the jokes were I laughed. Mm-hmm. I was like, this shit is actually really funny. Black people are super funny. I think the
Black Twitter's good for humor.
Yeah, I understand the intent. I understand the critique, and I think one of the things I have tried really hard to stay away from is gaining the benefit of a story about struggle that is not true. Mm. So the reason I talk about growing up in New Hampshire, and I talk about my parents, and I talk about the things I went through is that.
Which I never met a black person from New Hampshire
most
before.
People haven't. And the story behind that, and the reason my parents left North Carolina when my grandfather was having a quadruple bypass, and my dad said, I'm the child closest, and my mom said, okay, cool, we'll go, but I'm pregnant, so what are the school systems like? New Hampshire had the best one.
Right.
Thusly, Samuel and Jonathan.
So you grew up in New Hampshire.
Right. But I tell this story because it was a series of choices my parents made that had nothing to do with their comfort. It had everything to do with my success. Mm-hmm. That's why I grew up where I grew up.
As most parents make those types of decisions for their children.
I say all that to say the reason I think that the term and I think the way in which it was democratized and shared is really around like there are class fissions that we don't discuss, very real ones. They come out in language, they come out in text, they come out in access, and they come out very, very clearly in origin stories of things being built. And when you dig into someone's past, it's when you start to see that sometimes people aren't necessarily comfortable acknowledging the things they did get, which is okay. I think it's really, really cool when people's parents are able to give them money to start something.
Yes.
I think that's beautiful. I don't shame.
Because that's the issue now. Too many of us don't have access to
Right.
those types of resources. So if you have even your family members can do that, be happy for
the
that.
next thing I want to know is how. Like, what were your parents doing 20 years ago that let them do that now? Like, that's information I need so I can do it, right? I think the way it is levied at Blavity, I think, comes with the territory of where we are. Like, we can't avoid open conflict or an environment in which people have a feeling about what we do because we made a very audacious claim, and it is a requirement that, like, there's feedback attached to that.
You know, that works.
Yeah,
that
no,
works.
I think just frankly, because I think about it a lot, and I always think about like where could the conversation go in such a way that it isn't reductive. And I think what doesn't make it reductive is talking about like class as it relates to black people and our class ascension, or in my case, the class straddling that I do in my family, right? Because like not everybody is me.
Right.
And like, let's be really clear, like when what makes Haiti so important is what makes the Caribbean a bright spot and a dark eye, which is that like the reason people are so fiercely national is because they were under colonial rule.
Right.
Haiti flipped it and then was deprived of everything any sovereign nation ever would be. And the trickle down was that other nations started getting their resources pulled or were pushed out of actual trade agreements, which hurt nations that are surrounded by bodies of water. And so I say all that to say, like, all of this is complicated. All of it requires interrogation, and all of it is just conversations I think we are worthy of having given our level of intelligence and the democratization of our platforms, which means we can reach more people with higher quality information faster with more directness. And that's really all I want for my peer set. I want us to have difficult conversations predicated on love, understanding, and hopefully some level of discourse that helps us better understand the world that we're trying to create and that we're going to leave to people that we don't know about.
Can't argue with that. So, because we're already way over time, but I do want you to talk about your fellowship at Harvard, Neiman, the Neiman Foundation, and then we can get into some quick Q&A, and then we can get out of here. So go ahead.
Yeah, so the Neiman Foundation is a journalism fellowship at Harvard that was started, I believe, in 1938. It brings together 12 domestic journalists and 12 international journalists for a 9-month period at Harvard for the express purpose of them exploring what the future of journalism and media could look like and getting access to all of the resources that Harvard and the surrounding campuses have to offer. It's had, I think, around 1,500 people come through. Over 100 of them have won Pulitzers, which is a wild hit rate. And so it's lit. Like, I'm super excited to be there. Like, I think for me, it was a question of where do I want to grow? Where do I want my growth to be? And what kind of thinker do I need to become to be able to build new ideas for myself and for things that I think matter. My research will be around like the history of Black media in the digital age. So like what the upswing has been, and then also people as media outlets. So like Cardi B or LeBron or Steph, like as entities, how do they interact in the media ecosystem, and what does that look like? And then what that means for the media and advertising landscape, because that's where I sort of did a lot of work. And they don't necessarily know what's next. We obviously do, but there's not a lot of equity in that relationship. So it's sort of like the way in which an independent creator gets treated is not only untenable, the splits aren't even helpful for that person to live, to get a livable wage. But we're too valuable to be taking scraps for our level of creativity. So I think there's a way in which we should not be letting other people research us, tell us how influential we are, then we take their perspective and tell other people that we matter. Like that's not an all money in situation.
Right. Okay. See, We Work Apollo community manager Rachel Garland over there, ready to bite my head off. Okay, cool. So we're gonna take a few questions from the audience. I just realized I don't have anybody to take the mic, so I'm gonna go walk around. Oh, you wanna do it? Oh, you have a question? Okay, all right, I'll come. Okay. Shout out Dante.
My guy.
I've been listening to you talk, and you're very careful with your words, and you're very thoughtful. And I also see you have some beads. Are you working with any sort of meditation or, I don't want to say the word mindfulness, but you seem to be a person who's pretty mindful. Is that something that you would say is attributed to some of your success and some of your self-awareness that you've been describing to us?
Yeah, so I really don't have any chill as like a person. Like I really don't. Like as a human being, like people that care will tell you, like I really don't. I like work on that. So on a serious note, yeah, I since like high school, I had like a real struggle with like mild anxiety and panic attacks, and so I learned pretty early on that there was a need for me to figure out like what quiet space means to me. I pray a lot, I write a lot, and I spend a lot of time by myself preparing to be in rooms where I need to be performative. That is like use my voice for a reason. So yes, it has saved my life in no uncertain terms, and it has allowed me the time I need to not just like rush my thoughts, but be like to learn like really simply that feelings are not facts. That's okay. Like I still deserve to have them. What I treat them as is what the output will be. And I think I needed to kind of like slow down a little bit to do that. And entrepreneurship isn't really about like slowing down, but it's counterintuitive. Like the slower I get, the better I get at the things that I'm supposed to be good at, which is really being healthy. Because if I'm not good, then nothing around me gets the best of me. So yeah, mindfulness and meditation is helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So right in the middle, Dante.
So I had a question about, like, you mentioned something about not caring what people think, like, especially nowadays, like, with social media. How do you handle, it's easier said than done to, like, honestly, I don't care what you think about me, but how do you, like, personally, like, handle that, and how often, eventually you get over it, but, like, how much time do you give yourself to, like, be like, man, that hurts, and then you move on, like,
Yeah.
realistically?
So I think the other side of me not caring is I care a ton what you think, like all the time. Like though that it's actually a ladder. So I didn't do a good job of being like I really care and I don't. I give myself as much time as I need, because I'm a sensitive person. I care. Like I'm an empath. So stuff affects me. I can't lie about that. I think I've gotten better at realizing that someone's opinion should never dictate my choices. So there are things that I try to remind myself of when I'm like really upset that someone said something sideways or I heard something about myself. I have to go back to what I know to be true versus the opinions I hear. I don't know that to be true. That's their opinion. What I know to be true is that I'm actually becoming who I said I wanted to be. And to keep going, I can't listen to necessarily the opinion of someone that doesn't have context about me. That's different than if they were giving me feedback that was hard to accept. Feedback that's hard to accept, I have to think about differently because that person has a vantage point that I might not see. So I think it's really about like if you hear something, I'm again pretty contrarian, so I don't always believe what I hear, but I also know that there are things to be gleaned from people who don't necessarily like me. So if I can suspend my judgment of them for a second and myself, I'm able to be like, actually, like, maybe that was trash. Like, maybe, I don't know. But I have to think about it actually at like a very clear level. And that means that I have to spend time being like, this upset me. I'm upset about this. What things do I do when I'm upset that help me get back to where I need to be? So I try not to respond when I'm really, really hot-headed. Because again, with no chill, I would just be a savage on Twitter. So a lot of times the reason I don't have Twitter is because I don't need it. Because I will like eviscerate someone. And that's not helpful for me or anything that I'm trying to do. So it took me a long time to get there. But I think the first place is to realize that everyone is always going to have opinion about something, somehow, some way. The real question is, what is your opinion of yourself? And are you actively cultivating a positive one such that you can stand up under different types of scrutiny? Because you're going to keep getting better, which means the opinions are going to keep coming and they're going to get heavier and heavier. You're going to be able to tolerate that and deal with it, though.
Let's do two more.
Hi, you talked about how sometimes pushing through could be a negative.
Yep.
So can you give a specific example about that, but also couple that with what you've also had to unlearn with regards to pushing through?
Yeah. So I find that like perseverance was like I even say it's like a value in my house. It's like water. Like I don't know another way. Like my only examples are people like coming here, making something, and then like continuing against in like extreme scenarios and then like breaking free. That's a beautiful thing. I think the unlearning piece was around not everything I'm involved in needs to be conquered. Like there are certain things I have to let go of, and a lot of it was pride. Like a lot of it was me like, the ironic thing about like surrender is that I hate to do it, but every time I do it, I get stronger. Every time I've been like, I'm going to let this go. I wake up in the future and I'm like, wow, like I'm better now. Probably the biggest example of that was how long it took me to apply to Neiman. I had Neiman on my Google Chrome bar since 2013. Yeah, I'd known about the program. I'd researched it. I'd looked at people who'd done it. I got their bios. I wasn't even going to apply this. Like, I started applying in October because I didn't believe I was good enough. It didn't matter all the stuff I'd done. Like, none of those awards. Like, again, in my head, I was like, there's no way. I'm not a journalist. I never worked at a publication. They'll see my I invented every single reason possible that I was not qualified to do it. Even coming out of my interview, I didn't think I got it. I was like, nah, they're going to curve me. It's okay, though. I'm going to be fine. Like, and when he called me, the head of the program was like, Jonathan, you got Neiman. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I didn't believe, like, I have a complex I'm working through around, like, I'm not used to good things staying in my life. So when good things happen to me, I am like, what terrible calamity is coming? Like, what thing is coming to unseat that? Because then I have to become a monster to get myself and everybody around me through it. So good things arriving in my life petrify me at a deep personal level because I've had some things taken. My remedy to that is to, again, remind myself that if I can survive the good things, I can survive the bad things. I can survive the things that are coming to bless me. And I don't know if I've really had like an experience deep enough outside of Harvard professionally that was something I wanted. It came true. And now the hardest thing I'm going to have to do is literally accept my life for the next 9 months. Like the hardest thing I have to do in 2018 is when people say, are you at Harvard, to not demean it and to say, yes, I am in fact here. This is what I do. This is me. And that's a really hard thing. But I think you can take that on a base level. And it's like, I don't like people who put aspiring in their bio, because it's not worth it. If you're writing, you're a writer. Writers show up and write when they don't feel like it. If you're a filmmaker, same thing. If you're a personality, if you're a writer, if you're a strategist, that's who you are if you commit to it. None of these cosigns matter to me, because I had to decide that I was going to be Jonathan way before I quit my job or got another job or went to Harvard. It was about like, who are you, and are you comfortable with who you're becoming? And if not, what adjustments do you need to make in yourself that allow you the flexibility to wake up happy and go to sleep fulfilled? And I'm trying to figure that out, but I'm like a little closer this year, and it's much better.
All right, so I mean that pretty much about does it. I mean, we could keep talking because it was like about a good 10 or 15 other things I wanted to to speak on. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, I appreciate you for coming again. You know, this is a great talk. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Everybody who came, I appreciate y'all once again. Thank y'all. Thank you to WeWork. Thank you to Marcus again for the great intro. And tell people where they can find you.
Yeah. I'm on.
If you want to be found.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at JON2_Jackson. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I have a newsletter at tinyletter.com/Mr. Jackson. So I'm trying to be more consistent with writing. I've taken some time off from that, but that's like a goal of mine. So I give people the newsletter, because the more people that sign up, the more accountable I am to actually like send them something. So
man, you done said like 50 million things that made me think like, dang man, like are we the same person or what's happening? But again, okay, for those that don't know, I host a podcast, the All the Fly Kids Show. There's people in this room who have been on the show. I'm not gonna call y'all out, but y'all know who y'all are. And there's people who have been avid listeners, so I appreciate y'all for listening. If you're unfamiliar, you can go to alltheflykids.com. You get everything, links to social media, past shows, whatever you need to know is there. So thank you again, Jonathan. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate it.